We got another request today coming from Real Gamers MBR in the Patreon request tab. This is for the Galaxy class Starship. This is a lore video as said by Certifiably Ingame. I'm an idiot. But, so, as far as ship classes go, the Galaxy class, I think, was the biggest statement on the Federation's... What's a good word for it? It would be a good... It's a good, solid statement on their both lack of understanding of where, how violent the universe could be, and the geopolitical situation in the Alpha and Beta quadrants. Sheer fact of the matter was, the galaxy was designed initially to allow for long missions with family crews on board, like with families and everything, as kids, all this other kind of stuff. This was not a ship of war by any stretch of the imagination, which perfectly fit into the Federation's entire role in the opening stages of TNG, with the opening years of TNG, onwards into the later years of TNG, after Wolf 359, everything like that. I always looked at that ship as it was a beautiful symbol of what the Federation had become, but it was also a dire warning of what the Federation had become. The Federation, at the point where the Dominion War kicked off, and at the point where they encountered the Borg, was so passive, were such pacifists that they were essentially asking for the beating that the Dominion gave them. Okay, I mean that's just a straight up fact. They had. What is a good way to say it? This is the problem with me trying to expand on lore and theory craft while at the same time approaching it cold. They had taken their eyes off the ball. And as long as they were within, parity for their neighbors as far as militaristic power, they were okay. The problem was they had never really built any dedicated warships, whereas the Klingons were doing nothing but building warships. The Romulans were building dedicated warships. They were not. Every vessel that Starfleet had was dedicated towards exploration and science, with self-defense mechanisms built in. At any point in the Federation's history, past the what would you say, after the original series, and especially after the Earth-Romulan War, they could have started putting together ships that could stand toe-to-toe with the best things that could be thrown at them. They didn't do this. And the Galaxy class is a culmination of that thought process, where you're in a universe that could turn hostile, but you are the big cat. You're the big dog in the yard until you find out there's a bigger dog, and you've gotten very, very comfortable in your position as that dog. I might be rambling. I might not make any sense. Maybe you guys have got it before I do. Anyhow, shutting up, moving on. Let's get into this. Do I like the Galaxy class Starship? Yes. I do like the Galaxy class. But I like it as a symbol of more than the ship itself, in any case. Let's get into it. Certifiably Ingame.
Hello all, Rick here, covering one of the most famous classes of Trek ship, the Galaxy class cruiser. Development of the Galaxy class began in 2343, which makes it the longest development period of any of the Federation's starships. Its development was fraught with setbacks, both technological and from administration. The vessel from the outset was supposed to be the most powerful class put into service, pushed for by Admiral Carstairs, while other voices cited the vessel as overpowered and nothing but a provocation to other powers. What need did Starfleet have for such a powerful ship? One that could bring such devastating firepower to bear, if not War. It is likely then for this reason, much more dedication was given to outfitting the Galaxy class with extensive diplomatic, exploration, research, and even civilian facilities, readily creating the mission profile of a versatile capital ship explorer. Developed during the Golden Age of Exploration, as it was termed, the non-serving presence on the ship was not an overly contentious issue, considering how content and, well, arrogant Starfleet had become in its security. The ship
Did I not say that? Like, yes.
was following on from the Ambassador class as the poster child of the Federation, and that class of vessel had in many ways done all the legwork and ironed out all the technologies at play within the Galaxy class. Not much new was added to the design, it was just a refinement of all Starfleet's experiences up to that point. Forget 5-year missions, the Galaxy class was potentially able to complete 10 years without major overhaul needed, and it was big. The grand scale of the vessel would not be eclipsed until the emergence of the Odyssey a generation later, and much of this internal volume was down to the fact that the Galaxy was envisioned as practically a mobile city.
Yes.
In many ways, it was more like a starbase than a starship. It would have the facilities needed to operate in deep space for years without the need to return. And not only that, but operate comfortably.
Yes.
It is borderline opulent. The level of facilities available on this ship, from pools to barbers, many lounges, bars, holodecks, and so on. Perhaps it is in this light it is no wonder the class took so long to develop. Utopia Planitia was the primary site developing this class, but with the resources it took to produce a single one, the workload was shared among other facilities too, such as the San Francisco fleet yards, which would develop later ships of the line. The USS Galaxy NX 70637 was launched in 2356 and was still in service 2 decades later, now with an NCC registry, which is nothing, as it was envisioned to have a 100-year lifespan. Following the life and details of the USS Galaxy is in many ways a good indicator of the versatility and life of this line, and it received numerous upgrades, refits, and overhauls throughout its service, something that we do see reflected in other prototypes. Unlike the, say, Sovereign, however, which had modifications tested on it before being implemented to its sister ships, the Galaxy was the receiver of numerous upgrades and modifications derived from the performance of other Galaxy classes. With the USS Galaxy launching for field tests in 2356, Starfleet took its time with this one. The class entered full production in the early 2360s, with the USS Enterprise and the USS Yamato launching in 2363, meaning that the class effectively had a 20-year development behind it. Even then,
Now, that's a lot for a ship. That's a massive amount. Even, like, that's huge.
the rollout in further Galaxy-class ships was slow, with only 1 or 2 a year until the Battle of Wolf 359, when Starfleet had that wake-up slap I kept referring to. Then they accelerated their Galaxy-class production, just in time for the Dominion War. In fact, several Galaxy-class starships were launched in a state of 65% completion during the early war, with almost all of their civilian facilities left incomplete, due to the fact these vessels were expected to face combat. And to clarify, these rushed ships worked just fine as it was. They simply lacked many of the comforts that this class was originally supposed to launch with.
Right.
In fact, the Galaxy classes, even when completed, had around 35% of their internal rooms empty, with the idea that mission-specific technologies, diplomatic venues, or other such things would be added as required by the crew, without having to sacrifice existing areas.
Yep.
A part of the original design idea for the Galaxy class was to make it adaptable in the same way as the Constitution was, although not quite as extreme. This made cycling out older systems and components far easier than on other vessels, so that when a Galaxy class entered the field, well, you knew it was going to be a powerful ship, but perhaps not the overall specs, as the line was organically growing from its myriad of vessels all sharing developments.
Now, you see, the thing about the Galaxy class was the Galaxy class, while it was extremely powerful, it had impressive amounts of shields, it had impressive firepower, it was still... It was spacious, it was opulent, the hallways were large, the crew quarters were very, lush. It was damn near a luxury liner. And that's what it was. Compared to the only thing in the Alpha, I think one of the only things more powerful than that in the Alpha Quadrant would be the Dixer's class Warbird. And that thing was most definitively a warship.
Some such developments included the overall warp core tuning and coil overhaul, which increased maximum warp factors by 5% when compared to its factory default.
Mm-hmm.
The Galaxy class did have a major flaw though. That was when it sustained heavy damage, it was rather prone to warp core issues from the stress. The unexpected bursting of a coolant pipe or a fracture to the casing could easily snowball into a full warp core breach, if not dealt with immediately. In essence, when a Galaxy class went down, there was generally a higher chance than usual of it exploding in core detonation.
Yes.
To combat this, extra magnetic buffers and a force field around the core were installed to protect it. We also saw numerous improvements made to the Galaxy class's computer core systems, with additional subspace processors and the evolution of the battle bridge. During the Dominion War, the USS Galaxy and several other ships were taken and adapted to be command centres for fleet coordination, chosen for their powerful shielding and defensive capabilities. To manage this role, a flag bridge was installed on Deck 8 or 9 depending on the ship, potentially replacing the battle bridge. This secondary command centre was more like a CIC for planning, tactical decisions and relaying fleet movements. It had its own dedicated subspace transmitters that were incredibly powerful, with backups added to the midline of the drive section. It also had a tactical holodeck built onto the rear of the flag bridge for real-time simulations and maps. Now, not every Galaxy class needed such additions.
I didn't know that it did that, but it doesn't surprise, the Dominion War caused the Federation to legitimately wake it. Wolf 359 was a wake-up slap, and then the Dominion War was nothing more or less than the Federation getting a pounding for their complacency.
War, but it does go to show the esteem and important role they played in the fleet, considering this was at the height of the Starship's production and its replacement, the Sovereign, was still early in its lifetime. So then it should be evident the blow to morale that the loss of the USS Odyssey was that heralded the beginning of hostilities with the Dominion.
Gargantuan.
Considering Starfleet considered that Galaxy-class vessel to be more than sufficient to display to the Dominion a warning, only for it to be taken down.
Right.
Of course, one of the most notable features of the Galaxy class was the saucer separation ability, which most actual Starfleet designs featured some version of. However, in these older iterations, it was more of an emergency evacuation kind of thing, whereas the Galaxy class would be able to do this with more versatility in mind, and more importantly, a reconnect without a facility welding it back together. In part, this was so that the civilian presence did not have to be pulled into every dangerous scenario. In practice, however, this was
another sign of in my opinion, the naivete, the pacifistic nature, and just there's no other way to say it, arrogance of Starfleet before the Dominion War in Wolf 359. Because, yeah.
Seldom the case, because it was still an intensive and alarming procedure that involved a degree of risk in itself. When separated, the saucer section was also deprived of warp travel, but it did have the ability to sustain an active warp field, allowing it to coast along if separation was conducted at warp speeds. The Galaxy class was 642.5 metres long, 473 wide, and 133 tall, with a mass of 5 million tonnes. It was 42 decks tall and had a crew of 1,012 people. However, with its extreme internal volume, it could house up to 15,000. It could cruise at warp 6, which was not the fastest speed in the fleet, probably due to its mass, although it could easily push this to warp 8 without ill effect. Its maximum speed was initially warp 9.2 for 12 hours, although with the sheer power its core provided, it could reach 9.8.
Yes.
That was exceeding safe velocities. Generally, I think the Galaxy class's sheer scale and mass worked against it here. Forcing a bulk like that through subspace was not fantastic, and indeed later proved to be detrimental to subspace itself.
Yes.
It was armed too, with 11 to 14 Type 10 phaser emitters and 2 photon torpedo launchers, one fore and one aft. However, these could simultaneously fire up to 10 torpedoes at once. It also had a sturdy deflector shield that could be easily adapted and remodulated for a variety of hazards.
That's the only thing that really annoyed me about Trek, especially TNG, is like, it doesn't matter what the problem is, I'll modify the main deflector. Like, any problem whatsoever, modify the main deflector. It was the one thing, it's the one trope in Star Trek that I just wish they stopped doing. Let's just take the MacGuffin and make it the MacGuffin for every problem that we have. And every single time Geordi would be explaining a problem, then he'd look off to the side and be like, unless, and then I'd just be like, okay, they're going to modify the main deflector.
Befitting its role as a capital ship, it had numerous shuttle bays and a large amount of auxiliary craft, with the main shuttle bay covering the majority of 2 decks, 3 and 4 of the saucer section, with 2 smaller bays on deck 13 of the engineering hull. It also had 5 hangars for storage and maintenance of small craft located adjacent to the bays. It could easily accommodate multiple runabouts, and had a shuttle complement of 25 shuttles and 12 smaller shuttle pods of various types.
Okay.
It also had room to spare for more, which was always a possibility for the transports of dignitaries and the like. The Galaxy-class Starship was envisioned as a powerhouse ship that would cruise the stars and bring the Federation's presence to any sector it arrived in for show. A Galaxy-class arriving was a statement, less of a Starfleet ship is over there, and more of the Federation is here. Its reputation was well earned, for effectively it could operate as a battleship, just one draped in pomp and circumstance.
Very much so.
In fact, if one were to simply read through its schematics and ignore all the frills, it could easily be assumed as such. As alternate realities and the Dominion War have shown, when the excesses are cut away, you are left with an incredibly powerful ship, and had events unfolded differently, maybe this class would have stayed true to its 100-year vision as a Federation flagship. But technology evolved.
Yes.
Starfleet's approach to warp radically changed, and it stopped sending untrained families into deep space.
Yes.
As such, the Galaxy class took a back seat to the newer ships that came after. but it retained its value as a symbol of the Federation's golden age. Thanks for watching this video on the Galaxy class. There is so much material covering its specifications, rivaling the Constitution class, that a full video covering everything would likely take hours to do, from its citation ops to actual schools. Like I said, it was basically a mobile city. This is unlikely to be the last video I make concerning the Galaxy class, so until the next one, thanks for watching. I've been Rick, and goodbye.
So, the biggest thing about the Galaxy class for me was, as I have said, it was a sign of the times, and it was a sign of the universe that the Federation found itself in. At the beginning of TNG, the threats that they were facing at the time, that they actually considered them threats. The Shellyak, you had things like that. These things concern the Federation, but even people they fought wars against, they weren't really trying to. And this is what I love, and at the same time annoys me about the Federation, because they would sit there and they'd fight wars, such as the war they fought against the Cardassians, and they would not go for any kind of definite win. Their pacifism wound up costing them more in the long run. If you watch, and I can't remember what episode of TNG it was, but a Nebula class wound up beating the crap out of the Cardassians and causing them massive problems. The Nebula was not a ship that in any way, shape, or form was near the most powerful that the Federation had to bring to bear. It was a science ship, like completely and totally. And this thing was called a warship by the Cardassians, and it pretty much insta-clapped a Galler-class battleship. This is not the Federation. When it fought its first war against the Cardassians before the Dominion War, it could have just cut loose, but it was not the Federation's way. And it's the one thing I love but hate about the Federation, because their pacifism has cost them so much in the long run. All things being considered, though, that was Certifiably Ingame's ship on the Galaxy class. And it's something that a ship like this can make such a statement to me of the way the Federation operated, the way the Federation handled its business, and that death of hope that came with the Dominion War, where the next ship the ship that replaced it was the Sovereign, which was a far different kind of ship. All of Certifiably Ingame's links are going to be in the description down below. I highly recommend you guys check him out. Check out the merch store below. Yes! In any case, I'm going to be heading out from here. Guys, if you enjoyed this, please leave a like and comment down below. My links below have my Patreon and the Discord, so you guys can come in and throw rocks at me. We're almost at 1,100 people in the Discord right now. If you want to make a request, just join the Discord. Go down to the Request for Reacts channel and pop your request in there. I may get to it. I may not be able to get to it. It is the nature of the beast, you guys. There are way more you than there is of me. I cannot wait. I want my Star Trek show that is the Trek that I know past the Dominion War. I want to see what happens to the Federation. I'll catch you guys next time.